Premier League, also known as the most competitive league in world football. But recently, it's become a bit of a closed shop to those struggling to get into the Premier League and also cement themselves as Premier League regulars. Welcome back, football fans. Today, we're diving into a bit of a pressing issue in the Premier League. Now more than ever, there is a constant and continuous widening gap between teams in the Championship and teams in the Premier League. For the second season in a row, those three teams promoted from the Championship to the Premier League look poised to spend next season back in the Championship again. And this begs the question, is the Premier League becoming some sort of exclusive league for clubs that can only afford to stay there? Or is there more of a pressing issue at hand? In this video, we're going to analyze not only the struggles of those teams that are promoted, but we're also going to be looking into some of the financial aspects around it, be looking into the tactical disparity, and of course, why this is becoming somewhat of a trend and what we can do to stop it. Now, let's start with this current season of the Premier League. If we look at the table and the standings, it paints somewhat of a grim picture for those three newly promoted teams. Leicester, Southampton and Ipswich are all in the bottom three. Southampton haven't even gotten 10 points yet, and Leicester and Ipswich are both stuck on 17. With a combined goal difference of negative 111, again, at the time of recording, this is shocking. Now, no one's saying that these three teams are going to come into the league, shock everyone, and then start competing for Champions League places. We're not saying that, but this struggle is a bit of an eye-opener. Now, yes, these three clubs are struggling defensively, which sees them each averaging more than 2 goals conceded a game, but also going forward, none of these teams even average more than 1 goal a game, which is definitely shocking. The transition from dominating in the Championship to now being in the Premier League and struggling to get points on the board is mesmerizing, and it's something that seems like a monumental challenge for all the teams in the Championship. I want to know you guys' thoughts. Why do you think promoted clubs have been struggling so much recently? Is it just the financial gap? Is it the tactics not matching up for the Premier League? I honestly don't have a clue, but we're going to explore it. So drop your comments down below and see if you agree with me. Now, one significant factor that has always been there since the beginning of time is, of course, the financial disparity between the Premier League and the Championship. It's an absolute financial chasm. Now, according to stats generated from the 22-23 season, the average amount of revenue that a club in the Championship will generate is around 22.3 million. Now, of course, this figure excludes any sort of parachute payments that are made to the clubs, but this isn't even up to 20% of the amount that each Premier League club will get. Now, for teams in the bottom half of the Premier League, so not even all 20 teams, each club's revenue is around 150 million for a single season in the Premier League. And that's not even touching the surface on what they get in terms of TV rights and matchday revenue. Now, each club in the Premier League earns a fee of just shy of around £80 million, which also includes, broadcast rights, appearances, and any other sort of facility fees that need to be paid. Now, if we compare this to the Championship as a whole, they receive just shy of 180 million. Now, not only are there 4 more clubs in the Championship than the Premier League, but this means that each club in the Championship, on average, gets around 2.4 million per club. Now, if we look at the numbers alone, it's absolutely shocking. On average, 3 Premier League clubs in the bottom half for one season will earn more than the entire Championship on broadcast rights alone. Now, yes, promoted clubs receive a financial boost, but it is clearly not enough. Now, with that small financial boost, it definitely leads these promoted teams to, rush transfers, buy players that are, Premier League proven towards the end of their career and can't really help the team stay afloat. With this, it makes surviving the Premier League an uphill battle and something that these clubs have really been struggling with in recent years. Now, I guess to build a better picture, Burnley, for example, when they were in the Championship, got over 100 points, dominating the league and absolutely clearing it with company and is great playing football. Got into the Premier League and they struggled magnificently, which saw them, of course, go down into the Championship just after dominating it a whole year prior. Now, of course, in the past, we've seen teams come up from the Championship and struggle. That's nothing new. But the fact that all 3 coming up are the next 3 to go down, this is sad to see. Even a fan like myself who supports someone in the Big Six, a club that, is always going to be in the Premier League, a club that's always going to be looking to be in that Champions League, those type of spots and competing for the title, it's something that is quite foreign to me, but I enjoy the league as a whole because it's usually a mix of different teams. And I like the stories that I used to see when I was younger, looking at the Premier League, the Barclays Premier League, of course, when teams like Sunderland, Swansea, West Brom, Stoke, they could cause upsets and they would stay in the league for 4, maybe even 5 years before either getting relegated or going that extra mile and not only being those types of bottom feeders in the Premier League, but then establishing themselves as mid-table teams. Now, if we go beyond finances, there is an obvious, gap between, the player quality and the tactics available to these clubs. First thing that I want to mention, and it's going to sound very, very controversial, is the lack of squad depth for these teams coming up. Now, I'm not saying these teams are thin because they are definitely not thin. To play 48 games in the league alone, not even mentioning, you know, the first round or second round of the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup, they will need to have a big squad for this, and a squad that is definitely ready to go the extra mile, and a team that can definitely go the hard yards. The issue with the squad depth I'm talking about is the depth and quality, and I feel like this is the reason why certain teams, whenever they get promoted into Premier League, it's like, okay, cool, how can we get a bit of Premier League experience in these teams? How can we, you know, pick off from the likes of Liverpool, Aston Villa, maybe Tottenham, maybe West Ham, players that are going towards the end of their career that can come in 33, 32, 34 and play some games. Problem is that these players will not necessarily have the same fight as they did or the same grit that they had in their legs 5-6 years ago. So yes, it'll be good to add to the overall squad quality in terms of, you know, coaching, and when it comes to training, at least getting ready for the Premier League fixtures. But if you don't have these players available to play 38 out of 38, is there really much value adding these players to their teams? Now, a lot of teams in the Premier League play a high press and counter offer fast transitions in the game, something that these championship teams might not be privy to, or at least used to, week in, week out. For example, like I mentioned, Burnley were playing great free-flowing possession-based football in the championship, got 100 points, dominated, and people were thinking they were here to stay in the Premier League. Fast forward 6 months and they are struggling in the bottom three, and it looks like Kompany's tactics just aren't going to work in the Premier League. Now, of course, there's no slight to the manager himself. Kompany is doing well at Bayern Munich, but it's one of those things where I feel like, yes, you can play one way and dominate the championship, but the Premier League itself, different kettle of fish. And to be fair, we've even seen it with the likes of Southampton and Leicester, who might not have dominated the championship to the, you know, extent that, you know, Burnley or even Wolves have in the past. But when they come into the Premier League, they play possession-based football, playing out through the back, and that doesn't suit those players. It sees them get overwhelmed at the back, I guess lose possession in the middle part of the park, and they pay the price for it because they are both struggling in the league. Southampton, 9 points. Leicester at the time of recording, doing slightly better, but 17 points. And this begs the question, like, should championships, I guess, abandon the tactics that they used in the championship in order to survive in the Premier League for a season at least? Or should they continue going with their free-flowing football and actually get inspired by the likes of Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, and play this new modern way of football? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, because I feel like it's a very interesting, very interesting question. Now, of course, in this video, we've brought all these aspects of why, you know, the Premier League is now being, I guess, treated as some sort of exclusive club, but are there any solutions? And the first one I want to mention is a good use of these parachute payments. Now, just very quickly, parachute payments are payments that are given to clubs relegated from the Premier League. So let's say Luton, Burnley, Sheffield United, they will get a parachute payment to help recover losses from revenue from being in the Premier League and now going to the Championship. It's going to be a massive loss. So these payments are there to, I guess, ease the blow of that financial loss. And me personally, I would say that an effective use of this should be the way forward for these clubs. Now, again, I'm not saying that these clubs are completely irresponsible. There are clubs that do it well and still struggle. But I feel like looking for a long-term plan and a long-term vision to establish a club in the Premier League, that should be their #1 priority. Brentford many years ago did just that without the parachute payments, of course, because they hadn't been in the Premier League before. What they decided to do was look at ways to get younger talents from elite academies in Europe, teams such as Barcelona, PSG, Bayern Munich. When they release players or players that go on trial and don't quite make the cut there, Brentford are the teams that say, okay, you know what, these players have been released, let's take a look at them. Let's see if we can bring them into Brentford and see how they do here. Now, me, around 10 years ago, absolutely hated that decision, because not only did I know people that were at Brentford Academy, but also when I was looking to move on to academies and actually, you know, grow my own football career, seeing that Brentford, a London-based club, was no longer an option, and seeing what it did to a lot of players was absolutely disheartening. But if you look at Brentford right now, I guess you could say it worked out for them in the long run, because we've seen players such as Neil Maupay, Sergi Canos, Iñaki Peña come through Brentford and allow this Brentford team to become a team that is now established as a Premier League steady Eddie, someone who's there mid-table, going to cause upsets to the big teams and could potentially even push on for European spots. If this current trend persists, I feel like we're going to see the Premier League be the same boring league where I guess the same 3, maybe even 4 clubs dominate it. The same teams are there. There's going to be no fun. There's going to be no excitement. But I want you guys to let me know. Do you agree with what I've said? Or do you think that there's more to this issue? Or maybe the issue isn't even there at all. It's not something to be focused on, and it's ultimately not that deep. Make sure you guys subscribe to join MB United. There's going to be a video popping up on screen. I think you're going to enjoy it just as much as you enjoyed this one. So watch that. And until then, keep it real, and I'll see you when I see you.